All right, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the April 3rd, 2024 Select Board meeting. This meeting is being recorded. Please rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will skip over the town administrator's report.
One second. People on Teams can't hear us.
I think people on Teams can't hear it.
Okay, stand by.
I touch it. Well, there's no echo, they just can't hear it.
Oh, now she can.
Now they can hear.
They can? All right. We will proceed. Sean, we're gonna kick your town administrator's report till later in the meeting.
Sure.
We are gonna open with public comment.
Hey, I'm Art Friedman, 82 Millet Road. I've been here before, but I just wanted to remind the board about the probably using the ARPA funds for helping to mitigate the effluent into Fisherman's Beach. I know you're going to discuss ARPA funds this evening, and I appreciate if you consider a chunk of that money go towards starting this remediation effort. And also, I was at the Board of Health meeting last week before, and there was discussion of using testing within the town rather than sending it out. There's a special machine out there by IDEX, a Tectus system. And I think the boards, or some boards, are discussing it. I'd like to encourage the board selectmen to consider that, purchasing the machines so we do testing here much more frequently and actually cheaper. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrea Amore, Precinct 3. I also noticed that the ARPA funds are on the agenda for this evening, and it's been a few months since we have talked about them. And I know that we've talked about them a lot, and how there are a lot of different projects that this town would like to see forward. But my encouragement to the board this evening is to consider what our obligations in our town are and the promises that we have made, versus the nice to have things that would be great to have as icing on the cake. We need to build the cake first. When we entered into the consent decree, for those of us who are not familiar, it was effectively a promise that we made as a town. It's something that our Board of Selectmen in that year, in 2015, agreed to and signed on the dotted line, and I have that document in my hand this evening. I take integrity incredibly seriously. I take promises incredibly seriously. Things like that keep me awake at night, and I wish that it would keep this board awake at night too. If we do not fulfill our promises, which we have not been, and that's why the EPA is saying that we need to move more aggressively, it says something about this board and it says something about this town. And I really, really would like you to consider, as you begin to consider the different items that you may be suggesting, and I'm just making I'm just guessing here, right? I'm guessing it's not just going to be Fisherman's Beach that's on your minds and on the agenda for that. But I would encourage you to do a test for yourself and ask yourself, is this an obligation that we have, or is it a nice to have that we have? Because as far as I'm aware of, we only have one obligation that we made, one promise that we made, and we made that to the EPA, and we signed on the dotted line. So please consider that. A couple of other things in this report that it talks about are we were acting in good faith when we signed this document almost 10 years ago. I don't believe that we're acting in good faith anymore. We were doing things in the public interest, and I don't believe that we're doing that anymore unless we contribute a significant amount of funding expeditiously to be able to fix Fisherman's Beach. And we use that word expeditiously in here many, many times. We have not been acting expeditiously, but we have an opportunity to do that this evening, and I would really encourage this board to do that and to make good on the promise that we made to the EPA and to this town. Thank you.
Thank you.
everybody. Rachel Teradash. I live at 71 Middlesex Ave. I'm recently joined the board of Big Blue Bargains, and I'm here to talk to you tonight about Big Blue Bargains. So if you don't know what it is a local thrift store that was started in 2012 by a group of motivated parents who saw a need to supplement the funds for cultural enrichment in our public schools. So they organized, opened a thrift store, funded entirely by community donations and staffed entirely by community volunteers. They ran out of the Swampscott Middle School. They had a location there up until COVID. COVID happened, everything locked down, things changed. Last summer, we started working with the board, and we were at the farmers markets. We did the townwide yard sale, and with the help of some of the board members here, we connected with Charlie Patzios, who very generously donated at no charge a space for us to open temporarily. Our time there has run out at the end of this month, so we are looking for our new home. Having a physical, so we opened in September of 2023, so everything I'm about to talk about has happened since September of 2023. Having a physical location has allowed us to contribute to the Swampscott community in the following ways. We partner with the Swampscott High School Life Skills Program. They're in there weekly to assist with every aspect of running the store. We create a community where we have volunteers from high school students all the way through seniors, and if any of you have been there, you'll likely see our very young children running around there as well. So it's been a community of kind of all ages there. We've contributed to the following community causes: the Polar Plunge Andrew Keeter Scholarship Fund, Friends of the Swampscott Senior Center and veteran Sid Novak, Swampscott Elementary School Holiday Fairs, the Friends of the Swampscott Public Library. We've contributed costumes for the Rec Department's costume sale, the Jaron Foundation, Peter Cipriano's Coat Mission, eyeglasses for the Lions Club, Swampscott High School Unified Sports Team, the Swampscott Middle School Book Fair, the High School Drama Department, the Swampscott High School Washington, D.C. trip, and are contributing to the upcoming Swampscott Elementary School Field Day. So I'm here to ask for your help in finding our new location. We're confident that as a community, we can work together to find Big Blue Bargain, our next home. It doesn't have to be forever. We need our next space. If you have ideas, suggestions, or leads, you can reach out to us on Facebook or Instagram, or if you want to volunteer. And I'd also encourage all of you to stop by. We have a lovely 50% off moving sale happening right now. So we're at 491 Humphrey, and we'd love to see you till the end of the month at that location.
How big of a space do you need?
We'll probably work with anything. We can downsize, we can get bigger. We look forward to being flexible and making anything that could work for us work. So, thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. We have a hand on Teams, Eric Schneider. Welcome, Eric.
There. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, Eric Schneider, 480 Puritan Road, town meeting member and member of the Finance Committee, but I'm speaking on my own behalf tonight. As the board is well aware, this town is trying to turn a corner. We have maintained fiscal discipline. Our budget, though tight, seems to be in control. As in, we're not relying on free cash or overrides like other towns to balance our budget. But we still have a lot of work to do. After decades of neglect, our infrastructure needs significant investment. And I know you're all familiar with all the issues, but ultimately, what is a beach town when we can't use the beaches? But leaving all that said, what I'm here tonight to talk about is some ideas for additional revenue. And that is, in many towns that have nonprofits or other, large institutions, they receive payments in lieu of taxes. We have, religious institutions, other nonprofits that don't pay any taxes in town. The question is, have we approached any of them for payments in lieu of taxes? Recently, Boston imposed a new stormwater charge as part of their water bill. So the way I understand it is that depending on how much pavement you have on your property, you're assessed a charge for the stormwater. That could go to fund additional infrastructure related to sewage. As far as I understand, there's federal grants available through our senators, Senator Markey and Warren. I believe I sent you some materials on that. There's an April 5th deadline for the 2025 appropriations. And in addition, there's also the thought of imposing a transfer tax on real estate transfers. The idea behind that would be the neglect of our infrastructure, resulted in cost savings and lower taxes when that should have been invested. And this is just recouping those costs at a time of a sale. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. All right, seeing no additional hands in the room or on Teams, we'll move on. We're going to move on, and we're going to have a discussion of a presentation of the 2024 Swampscott Beach Sticker Design, one of my favorite meetings of the year. And I'll kick it off to Mr. Spelios.
Thanks, David. It's also one of my favorite, just because. So you guys have all seen this presentation before if you've had the opportunity to see these meetings, and this is our 5th year, I believe, that we have changed. Next slide's fine, Diane. We've changed from what was the historical, very beautiful badge of honor, quite literally, that the only thing that changed was the date and the color every year. I've told this story many times, but I'm going to tell it again because it still rings true. There is a lot that I enjoy about what I get to do. There's a lot that I really don't enjoy about what I get to do. But one of the things is, frankly, just continuing to see, and it's on the Linway because I go to Boston, but on the Linway, you passing all these cars and you see the cars with no longer just shields of Swampscott, train parking, beach parking, but artwork, which is done by residents, done by teachers, honoring our community. Next slide, Diane. This was the very first in 2019, so I guess it's by Lisa Harris at the Swampscott Middle School. Until this year, every beach sticker was done by a then current art teacher in one of the public schools who donated their time and their effort to be able to do it. Next slide. Taylor Byrne did the 2020, which again, this one is actually, again, we have the original artworks as well. It's really neat to see some of these original artworks in person. You really see the methodology and how they created the imagery. Next one. Rachel Eisenberg in 21. Next. Ryan Townsend in 22. And last year, it was Heather Imperatrice from Swampscott High School. Art teacher for 23. This year we did something a little different, and I can't take credit for the idea, and I'm going to give credit to the idea to a group of women in a minute who had the idea, but you can go to the next slide. This year's sticker was done by the Mashon Elementary School students, which sounds wonderful. If you know, the school closed in 2007. So how did we get the elementary school students from Mashon to do a sticker? Well, when Mashon Elementary School closed in 2007, a lot of artwork was taken from the building, and murals were taken from the buildings, and student artwork and class artwork was taken. And we still have them as a town, and we kept them. And as we're about to now transition other elementary schools into a brand new 21st century, absolutely amazing elementary school, it seemed appropriate for us to look back to the first elementary school that really started this transition for the town of Swampscott to this new amazing elementary school that everyone's children are going to be able to enjoy. Next slide, please. So when everybody gets the sticker this year, they're also going to get something that's going to describe a little bit about the sticker. In September 2024, Swampscott will open its doors to a new elementary school for all of Swampscott's elementary school children. The closure of the Michon Elementary School in 2007 was the initial catalyst for the development of a unified elementary school plan that resulted in this new state-of-the-art, energy-efficient, and forward-thinking elementary school. This year's sticker pays homage to the closure of all 4 of our elementary schools and the opening of the new elementary school. The sticker is taken from a community paper collage project done by students at the Michon School prior to its closure. I did the math to just understand if you were in the class of 2007 from Michon, that made you the class of 2014 from Swampscott High School, which seems so long ago. Next slide, please. These 3 women are the ones who deserve the credit for the idea and helping making it a reality. Ingrid Hale, Hannah Sharpless-Graff, and Suzanne Wright worked together and had the idea and brought it to life for us. So very grateful for their effort in doing this. And then last but not least, I am ready.
Drum roll, please.
The Swampscott 2024 sticker is a portion of that collage, a maritime-themed collage with orange turtles and orange fishes. I don't know if it's a native species or not, but it has been here at least since 2007, so it seems pretty native. Really awesome artwork that's going to adorn everyone's cars. And again, it's something that I genuinely enjoy when I have to go to work, to be able to pass people who have these stickers on their cars and display something more about Swampscott than just a name and a badge. It really talks a little bit more about how we all feel about our community. So Danielle Strauss, the director, did want me to let people know that those stickers will not be available until the end of this month. So while we're announcing it now, they're currently in the process of being printed, and then they'll be available online like in past years for people to purchase, and they'll be mailed to people's homes. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter.
Can I say something about the beach sticker
Of course.
program? So, God, I'm always the emotional one here. I really got to figure that part out. But anyways, although this beach sticker is symbolic of the closure of the elementary school, it's also the last beach sticker that Peter gets to present to us. And this was his brainchild, right? He saw a car somewhere and said, why aren't we doing that? And then he made it happen. So I just want to thank Peter especially for bringing this idea to us and executing it year after year after year. And I know it's one of his favorite things to do, but we don't say thank you enough sometimes for these types of ideas. And so I just want to make sure that we're saying that.
Anything else? All right. Thank you, Peter. We'll move on to another incredible discussion item, an emerging vision for the Hawthorne property. I know this has been a long time coming. So many meetings with the select board over the course of many years just to get to a position where we could acquire the Hawthorne property. And I really want to kick it off to you, Sean, to get the presentation going.
Great. Thank you, David. Really, this is
Yep, there you go.
this is an extraordinary moment in time. You know, just a few years ago, we met and began the process of really thinking about how to acquire this property, and much to the extraordinary efforts of this board, but also vote of town meeting, we were able to acquire one of the most gorgeous pieces of property that we have, frankly, in the Commonwealth, but certainly in the town. And so tonight, we're going to share a few updates and go over a preliminary concept. This update really will help us untap the biggest ideas that we have been able to pull together for the redevelopment of this property. I would just want to thank our team. We have had our Assistant Town Administrator and Planning Director, Pete Kane, working on this, our Director of Community and Economic Development, Marzi Galaska, who will join me for this presentation, and Natalie Bova from HDR and Mike McPhee from HDR will also be online, but certainly this is an exciting juncture. So next slide. Here's the overview of what we'll be talking about. Essentially, this is where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. We want to share some information about the process that we've used thus far, talk a little bit about some of the information that we've gathered, the community engagement, and really share with the board this preliminary concept and really have a dialogue about where we are going to be going. So with that, I'll transition this over to Marzi, and she will step us through the process so far.
Excellent. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here today. Diane, could we advance to the first slide, please? So as Sean had mentioned, we have undergone a very public participatory process for the redevelopment of this parcel. The project to date, including hiring HDR, as Sean has stated, who is a world-class planning and design firm. We held community meetings, we conducted community surveys, and our consultant, HDR, has used his data and our planning documents that included our open space master plan, a harbor and waterfront plan, to develop our preliminary concept that we are pleased to share with you today. On the slide, you can see some of the timelines that we had met for this project. Next, please. The data and feedback that we had received for this project included survey results by the community was really clear. We had heard from the community that the priorities included to maintain open space for public enjoyment and access to the waterfront. Views were very important. The goal to create a year-round destination, to seek opportunities to generate revenue for the town. Surprisingly, we are pleasantly surprised that off-street parking was not a priority that we had heard as part of the feedback. The concept started to take shape by analyzing the data and listening to the community. Looking at the world cloud on the left-hand side of the slide, you can see how residents prioritize most of the important uses and values. When you look at the word cloud, you really see certain words really jumping at you, such as open space, park, outdoor opportunities, and obviously views, location, waterfront, things that are important to the community. And now Sean will share with you some of the key findings and for the recommendations.
Next slide. Thank you, Marzi. So those word clouds really helped us pull together all of the comments from the community engagement efforts. We had over 400 people show up, one weekend to share their ideas about this incredible property. So we really, have boiled this down into some key findings. So the design of the site, we wanted to design a park that really people would be excited about. Wanted to have a site that celebrated this wonderful sense of place, this waterfront experience that is known over generations to Swampscott families and friends and visitors. We wanted to have an anchor that really tied the community together. This is the historic area where Olmsted actually designed the roads, one of the country's greatest landscape architects. So to have this culminate in a presentation right on the waterfront was really important. We also wanted to enhance accessibility. And that accessibility is not just so that everybody can go there, but we wanted to make sure that it was going to be 12 months out of the year, not just the warm months. We wanted to have it be accessible from a bunch of different vantage points, have the broader uses that we heard. Some folks had big ideas, some people wanted minimal ideas, and we wanted to make this site really speak to that accessibility. And we also wanted to make sure that we are fiscally responsible. We often have kind of talked about our fiscal responsibility. The work we've done over the last few years has really put the town in a position to really balance a lot of these broader responsibilities. But this project will help us ensure that 50% of this area will be preserved as green space. Design and building will be part of the landscape, and a program will be established for year-round use and really help balance, the need for a vibrant Humphrey Street, but also those special community events and art and culture and all the things that I think folks would want to see as we kind of think about the quality of life for current and future generations. So next slide, Diane. Marzi's going to take it back here and talk a little bit about our fantastic planners and team from HDR.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sean. As you just heard from Sean, we have established, with the assistance of our community, some really lofty goals. Sean had just talked about some of the recommendations and keys that the community really wanted to see on the site. So you can really see, how do we balance that? How do we use the design and really utilize the experts in the field to really narrow down the scope and all of the goals and the recommendations into a cohesive plan for the redevelopment of the site. So our team from HDR was fairly analytical about the process. They really used the data that was gathered through the public process from the surveys that we have held, from the 2 public meetings that we held, to really render a concept and design options that we can have. These concepts that you see on the board really kind of highlight or drive the process. How do we derive at the draft concepts that we'll have in front of us? And this really looks at, these drawings showcase the progression of the design. You can really see that by pushing down some of the access to the shoreline and pulling up the structures that would really create additional views, have better street presence, that really create a landscape or create a project that would draw people into the site and really create a range of activities and functions. Next slide, if we could. These concept drawings really align or created a shared goal of creating a beautiful landscape that will really appeal to everybody and will be utilized by the entire community.
Thank you, Marzi. So when you look at these renderings, you kind of see the challenge for the planners and the architects. They looked at different levels and trying to figure out, how do we balance those needs? Some folks wanted to see the Boston skyline. Some folks wanted to look at the ocean and really integrate all of those ideas into a concept. And so when we flip to the next side, you're going to see how all of these ideas get programmed into a space that we're presenting tonight. So next slide. So look at Swampscott. Look at the green space. Imagine yourself walking along that wall and taking it all in. Looking at the ocean, looking at the red rocks below. Those red rocks are the namesake of this town in a Native American language. We are the town of the red rocks, and those rocks below represent who we are. That building there is programmatic space. It's a place where we can enjoy for 12 months out of the year. It has uses that can support the arts and culture and performance and really speak to the needs that we hear about in our master plan and our harbor and waterfront plan and all of the open space plans. We're looking to balance all of those important ideas. So what else could we do that would help really support a town need and really help ensure that that property really would support the broader vision? So next slide.
And on the right-hand side, there's an arrow down.
You can scroll down.
Right-hand side, just get your cursor to the right-hand side.
Arrow.
That arrow down.
Is that it, or?
Nope.
One, two,
9.
13, above, right underneath 13, that's the arrow, Diane, under.
Right there?
Yeah, go up.
There you go.
There you go.
So it's a library. So this is a rendering of the Swampscott Public Library. I'm actually pleased to recognize Jonathan Nichols, our library director, here tonight. I've had to share a few thoughts with Jonathan, but we wanted to hold it for tonight. But this is a 21st century library. And so folks are thinking, you know, why a library? And when we think about a 21st century library, we're talking about a place in the information age that can help support all of these incredible opportunities. Nothing is more multi-generational than a library. Nothing really speaks to so many of the important cultural and community programs in the information age, like a library. We know that we have a wonderful library in Swampscott, but you know, it was built in 1917, and it has needs. And I've met with our library board of trustees and our library director, and we've talked about our needs. And sure, we're going to address those needs in the current facility, but you know, to really envision a 21st century library that has a great room that really can support a gathering of town officials and have meetings, perhaps not at the back of a building, but at the front of, you know, a really iconic property, you know, a property that can support a cafe along Humphrey Street that can help bring in revenue, a property that can have a catering kitchen that can support a use of the facility by a broader group of individuals, a large reading room facing the ocean that could be converted at night to weekends for public and private events, weddings, bar mitzvahs, and other celebrations that will also bring in revenue. These are all extraordinary opportunities that Swampscott deserves. We deserve it because we work hard. We manage our fiduciary responsibilities carefully. We look at a lot of the important responsibilities that we have to each generation. And our existing library also, you know, has library programs that can help fund new construction. We have all sorts of groups that we can work with to help define that vision. Next slide. So what is the process from here? And so we're going to continue to meet. We're going to continue to work on this preliminary concept. We've spent a lot of time over the last 2 years getting community feedback and having forums and really working through a tremendous amount of data. At this point, you know, we're looking to the next 6 years and looking to really figure out how to identify short and long-term uses of the site and identify funding sources. There are a lot of extraordinary individuals that have helped work to bring this project to this phase, but we're here tonight to really bring this to the select board and really get your thoughts on next steps. So next slide. So here's a vision of the existing site. Many of us have celebrated holidays there. It's a beautiful site. It has sat there since 1957. And, you know, there's been many, many events. Boston Bruins celebrated a Stanley Cup there. There's been lots of moments. Next slide. Here's a vision for the future. And all those wonderful moments all those extraordinary moments in time in a very special place. Swampscott indeed is fortunate to be in this position. I would say just a few years ago, it would be inconceivable that we could have such an extraordinary vision for how we define our potential. We're working right now with an extraordinary firm to turn the Hadley School into a boutique hotel. I mean, we think about how the synergies will all come together. It really defines an extraordinary potential. Next slide. At this point, I'm happy to answer any questions and turn it over to the board.
Yeah, so we do want to kick it off to the board, have the board ask questions, make comments, initial feedback, and then there'll be time for the public to raise their hand and to speak as well.
Any chance, before I speak, I would like to hear anyone else from the public that needs to speak. That's just my personal preference. But
So I think that one of these slides says that there was going to be community feedback in this section and the next section. So I mean, open to.
Yeah, so I think that what's helpful tonight maybe is if we can just ask questions to get clarity on things. I don't think you need to state opinions on things. We talked earlier, Sean, so I think you omitted one thing, which was we talked about the fact that later this month or early next month, there's going to be a public forum. In fairness to people, none of us really have much to react to. I mean, so I think it's really about flushing details out tonight and maybe having public comment, giving people a chance to absorb this so that when we have the forum later this month, because right now it just, I think it would be better if we could ask questions to flush out thoughts and ideas a bit. But that's just my 2 cents.
So I have a number of questions. A couple things. One is, I am concerned with the amount of public meetings we had prior to tonight. So we did purchase a piece of property. There were no public meetings prior to that to even discuss or think about buying a piece of property, which buying that property, I was 110% behind. I'm concerned that 2 meetings, was that enough to really get the input from the community? That's one concern I have. The information that we have there, I think I have heard from a large amount of residents that finances are a major issue with that piece of property. And I want to make sure that we're really clear on that, because on one of the slides there, it showed that finances was not that much of a priority, and I'm hearing something totally different from the community. I'd like to know, is this the only idea they had, or were there other ideas? Because, it looks like this is the only recommendation. I'd like to know, did they have anything else? And the costs, what are we looking at as far as cost? So those are my questions.
So I can actually help with some of this. And Mary Ellen, you and I talked an hour and a half ago, and I actually answered some of those questions. So I'm surprised that you didn't just want to share the answers I've given, but I'm happy to state them here so people
Well, I like to
people
make
can have
sure
them.
we say things out in public and not behind.
No, I understand. It sounds like it sounded like you didn't know the answers as opposed to you do. So let
I
me
don't
just.
know the cost.
Yeah, so let me just share.
I think
Yeah.
I
So
think I was
this was-
really clear that there isn't enough public comment.
Yeah.
So
I think the things that's exciting, and I think we should go back to the slide, if you don't mind, and go back to the slide on process, because I think actually, Katie and I had the opportunity to sit with Sean earlier today, so we've actually had an opportunity to just view the presentation as a dry run ahead of tonight. So what I thought was really important in that is that this is an idea. It's an idea. It's an idea for 15,000 residents to react to. And I think the important thing about the process here is that whether that there's been 1 or 100 meetings to date, there's going to be many more to come to give people a chance to comment on ideas. I think what I heard from a lot of people is the meetings that we did have were difficult because it was hard to grasp any one concept. It was hard to feel as though you're responding to any one thing. Here are 3 versions of open space. Which one do you like better? Well, how do I know which one I actually like better? Do I want a big building, a small building? Do I want parking or I don't want parking? Do I want more green space, less green space? And it becomes very difficult in those environments, notwithstanding the fact that so many people came, that the boards for months sat in town hall, and by the hundreds, people voted with their stickers, quite literally, on things, and gave comments. And the survey results have more survey results than any single initiative that we've worked on in the town since my 9 years being here. It's still not enough because I don't think there was enough presented for people to say, yep, this is it, let's do it, we're done. Instead, I think what we have here is the next step, an idea. It may end up on the editing room floor, right? Or it may evolve into a better version of this, or it may sit as the Hawthorne restaurant. Future boards, the town is going to decide that well after I'm gone. But I think what's really important here is that this slide says very clearly, and I know that you only had a minute to see it, so that's why I wanted to put it back up there, that this is about getting the feedback. And again, Sean skipped over it, but Sean just confirmed there is going to be a community forum later this month or beginning of May.
We highlighted the community forums because we actually want to get feedback. We want to continue to evolve this preliminary concept and really help it reflect the highest and best hopes for the town. But we did work with a world-renowned architectural and planning team. We've had the best of professional assistance to try to pull together a very complicated array of expectations. And that's still evolving. And what I want folks to really appreciate is that these things do take a little bit of time, but we're working through this process. And I do think that, we're at a junction point where we can pause and get some more input and really, answer some questions.
So and I want to now answer the other questions because I think you're asking great questions, which is I'm glad we had a chance to talk about that earlier today. This is not cheap. Nothing good's cheap. Open space isn't cheap. Well done open space isn't cheap. Do you mind stop sharing at this point? And so I think, and Sean, the conversation this morning, you were very clear about one of the reasons the library is such an ideal use to bring here is because, number one, it is multi-generational, but even more important, let's just talk dollars and cents. It is already open and staffed. It's operational. It's there. The doors are open. It can support things, as opposed to creating something new, an infrastructure that the town doesn't have today and probably can't afford to do. We have an infrastructure. We have an amazing library staff that is there and supporting. Number two, the state has we are such a lucky state to have such a robust library building program, akin to the MSBA for schools. We are so lucky. So many states do not have anything close to what we have in terms of what we're willing to invest in this. And so that matters because that's going to be state dollars. But the truth is, and Sean, you were pretty candid about this morning, I don't think anything like this happens without public money, and I don't think in this case, I don't think it's probably going to happen without private money. I think the price tag we talked about this morning was, in today's dollars, about $30 million. It is not cheap to do. Now, Sean said this morning, and I said, I didn't like the comparison, but it's a fraction of what we paid for the new school, a third. And so I've come to sit with that all day. And said, no, it's actually not a bad comparison if you think about it. I mean, everything's expensive now. So this is expensive, but everything's expensive now. But what, to me, what would be, so that's the price. And I think I actually called someone in town who does quite a bit of site work to really understand what this would do and, so that we could understand and feel good about numbers. There's so much work to be done here. And so is it $30 million? Is it $40 million? Is it $20 million? No one knows, and no one would know at this point. I think $30 million is a good number to sleep with right now. But what the final project is, who knows? Who knows what the final project is? Something like this. I would like to just, so I did any other questions that you didn't have answered, but I kind of want to share my comments, which is I appreciate the seriousness in which you look at things. It makes me sad that you start the sentence after seeing something like this by saying, I'm concerned. So I'm going to just say, I'm hopeful. So I'm just going to say, I'm hopeful. This is exactly what we need, meaning need hope. We need vision. We need ideas. I don't know what the final idea is going to be, right? But if we don't, buying the Hawthorne site was audacious. Swampscott hadn't spent, respectfully to some comments earlier tonight, if everybody knows what are the nice to haves and the must haves in community building, I really would like the manual, because there is no manual, right? We did nothing in this community, and we had high taxes, and we didn't build community, but recently we've been building community, and we've been making people realize that you deserve a $100 million elementary school. Our kids deserve it. Stanley wasn't as nice as you think. Hadley isn't as nice as you think. We deserved it, and we built community. And we're continuing to do this. This may end up being as mundane as Red Rock Park in Lynn. A sidewalk, walking around it with a couple of benches, and you can watch people play fetch with their dogs. That's what the final vision could be here. Who knows? That's someone besides me is going to make that decision. But you're never going to get to the vision by starting with talking about the reasons we shouldn't do something. You don't need to talk yourself out of something that's not a possibility. So let's start with the possibility. What if we could do this? What if we could build something that would be the envy of every community and have it be a place that's the most welcoming place, a library, that whether or not you had kids and wanted to play with them or you wanted to be outside, you could sit in a reading room and look at the ocean and read a book. You could come use the computers like you do now in the library, but you're doing it in a place. Again, I appreciate we've got to ask all the tough questions, and I'm confident we're going to ask all the right questions, and the future board is going to be. But I appreciate that we're starting from a place of hope, and I'm glad that you recognize this is going to be a 7+ year period. This is not. We bought a once in 100-year property. To do anything quick would be, in my view, a fundamental mistake, because you're not going to do it right. It takes time. And so I appreciate your acknowledgement of that and the challenges of doing it slow. The last thing I'm just going to say is I really appreciate HDR and the team. I appreciate the fact that you recognized, yes, revenue is important. Yes, other things are important. But you came up with a type of architecture that functionally allows the entire site to still be open space. A type of architecture that welcomes people to climb on it, to walk over it. If you've been to Seattle, Olympic Park in Seattle is a great example where we're trying to say, how are we going to get people from downtown to the ocean when you have to cross highways and railroad tracks? And so what they did landform masses over the entire thing. You don't even know that there's highways or railroad tracks there. You walk it. You walk it, walk over hills. And it made these utilitarian things, these things that are not as exciting part of the landscape here. And so the idea, I don't know how you do it, I'm not an architect, the idea though that the top of the building can be outdoor space and approachable and accessible, I think finds that right balance. So I think it's a great start. Again, others besides me are going to decide the direction from this, but I am very happy with the fact that we're starting from the idea of hope and opportunity, and then, we're going to ask the tough questions, and there's going to have to be some realities of things, but we're starting from a good place to at least take the next phase of this community process. So thank you to staff and HDR.
Thanks, Peter.
So I don't envy HDR's position here, because I attended both of the forums, and it was, number one, very difficult to get an opinion in edgewise, and that's sort of why I sit on this board, is to have an opinion. So to take the community opinion and put it out there, but I found it very difficult in those forums to be, number one, comfortable enough to say what your personal opinion was, because there were really strong personalities almost at every table who were pushing very different ideas. And if you went from table to table, one was 100% open space, you couldn't even say any way otherwise, and one was almost exclusively, where's the revenue? How are we paying for this? And so when I left there, I thought, I'm more confused than when I entered the room, right? Because it's very clear that the community wants different things, or so I thought. But what if we could have it all? What if it's an and, not an or? What if it's a, additive, right? Not subtracting. to me, I have to agree that, I mean, we are heavy library users in the Phelan family, and my mother-in-law takes my kids there, and my husband's always there, and he's always on interlibrary loan taking things out, and I mean, there's nothing more equalizing than the library. You don't need to have funds, you don't need to, it's not classist, it's not, it's like the epitome of equitable, right? And so what a wonderful beacon for Swampscott to say, like, all are welcome here, whether you're from here or not, to use the library, a public space. And then also putting in a way that we can sustain that public space to be a 21st century, 22nd century, 23rd century space by having revenue built into it, having a collaboration with our partners across the street to say, okay, so you want a function that's not going to fit on the Hadley platform. Well, community doesn't want Hadley to get any bigger, right? We don't want screaming, raging rooftop parties at Hadley. The neighbors don't want it. We want to preserve Linscott Park. We don't want to see tents on Linscott Park. We want to see that preserved for what it's meant to be. Well, where else can we go? So instead of saying no, let's try to find a new angle. And I think that's what HDR tried to do. I think they tried to take a lot of what seemed to be head-butting ideas, right, coming at it and say, okay, let's flip them on their head and see if we can't put them all together. When I first saw it, I thought, like, how incredible that the building actually exemplifies the views. And then I thought, oh, now in the winter, when you go to that spot, maybe you'll be angled a little bit from that really harsh breeze that comes on the water there. So you actually might be able to be outside there during the winter. Just some real smart, that's why we hired them, I guess, so good on us, but just some real smart usages of the space that make it a 12-month use outside of the building itself. So I'm excited to have this conversation. It is a conversation. We still have a lot of partners to speak to on this. I know I've reached out to the Board of Library Trustees to have a conversation. We haven't connected yet. I hope we'll do that next month to start talking about, I also want to mention, Sean did mention this, but this is a decades-long process, right? So like, we can't just sit here and do nothing with that building. We have to start pointing in a direction and going somewhere. But that doesn't mean we just stop doing the things we have to do at our library. That's a municipal building that's not going to go anywhere. If it's not a library in 10 years, fantastic, but it's going to be something that we have to do with that space. So it wouldn't make sense for us to drop the ball there. So I hope that, I know that, but just to say it out loud, that Max and others are prioritizing the library and making sure that the things that need to get done in the library are getting done. And then finally, I do think that we've highlighted it and we'll say it again. I think this has been one of the most public processes that we have had, always room to improve. It's not just a process that happened in 2 meetings. It happened in surveys. It happened in my son putting a sticker on the Ferris wheel at Town Hall saying that's what he wanted. It happened, like, there were a lot of other things other than those 2 meetings that happened to engage the public. I hope that all those things will continue to happen so that way you don't have to physically show up someplace and have an opinion in a room where you maybe don't feel welcome or don't feel like your opinion is the best opinion, but you still want to have it. Make people comfortable to have their opinions again. It can be very difficult in this climate sometimes to raise your hand and have an opinion because you're afraid of the backlash. And it's been great that we've done other things like surveys and at Town Hall, which are a little bit more, hold a little bit more anonymity so that people can have feelings without being vulnerable. So I hope we continue to do that and not just have public meetings, but also invite folks who are a little less comfortable than maybe the 5 of us to continue to have feedback.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Katie. No?
No, I want to hear other people's feedback now or later first.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm happy to give my feedback. And certainly, there's going to be time for the board to provide additional feedback based upon community comments. This is the start of the process. You know, I've traveled all around the country, and libraries are truly the heartbeat of so many towns. I've worked in publishing for probably 7 years, and I've gone around and I've visited hundreds of libraries all across the country, and they are the heartbeat of towns. They're the soul. And I think that anything that we can do to help support our public library is something that we should be doing. It's an investment. It's an investment in our current, and it's an investment in our future. And it's an investment in literacy and education, and there's so many positives around libraries. I love the landform architecture. I love it. I think it really fits in nicely. Just this initial concept really fits in nicely from the street. So as you're walking along Humphrey Street, you know, the building doesn't seem large and out of place because it is dug into the ground, which I really like, and I like the ability, you know, the playfulness with the design concept where you can go on the roof. I know my kids would certainly enjoy that. So will so many children of today and future generations can enjoy this. The town's making a considerable investment. I mean, it's looking at investing in much-needed infrastructure. We haven't done this. We haven't made these types of transformative investments. You know, when we met, you know, at the Hawthorne restaurant and had that initial kickoff, a year and a half ago now. I mean, this is a plan. This is a project. This is something that we're looking at for the next 50 to 100 years. I mean, this is truly what it is that we should be doing. We should be having and taking these big, hairy, audacious goals and ideas and visions and bringing them to the public. We do deserve it. We do deserve nice things. We can have nice things. We can do it. You know, but also this is something that's going to be so positive from a business development and in a community development perspective. You know, our businesses on Humphrey Street need this. This is going to bring much needed foot traffic to that Humphrey Street corridor, to our little restaurant row that is certainly, you know, thriving, you know, post-COVID. You know, we have outdoor dining. You know, now we need to bring additional foot traffic, additional folks from around town and from the region onto Humphrey Street to help, you know, realize and enjoy, you know, everything that our town has to offer. You know, this concept is going to be revenue generating. You know, if there's the ability to play the new hotel, the new Delamar Hotel, with a potential event space that allows us to not only have meetings in a nice area, but also to have, you know, weddings or other special events, that's going to be a significant revenue driver for the town of Swampscott. Just to walk into, just as a matter of reference, to walk into the Boston Public Library and have an event is something along the lines of $30,000. I don't know if we'll be able to get 30 grand in little old Swampscott, but it could be a substantial sum of money. That's not why we're doing it, but it is certainly a component and something that should be considered as we move forward. But most importantly, I think this keeps the promise that this board made, and that was discussed when we acquired this property, and we had, you know, numerous conversations, but we looked at really having that open space, having that green space, having those native plantings, and really doing something that was extraordinary. And I think, you know, when I was at these you know, these numerous events, you know, like Katie, it was certainly overwhelming. You'd have one person saying, you know, revenue, 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 and another person saying no revenue, another person saying buildings, buildings, and another person saying open space. And I do think that this vision does help us really have it all, and is certainly the start of the process and not the end. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, can I just, you remind me, you mentioned Delamar, and just for those that don't know it by name, Delamar is the hotel group, which is doing the boutique hotel at Hadley School. We have Katie, myself, and Pete Kane, and I think that's it from staff. we have weekly calls with Delamar just to advance the process. They're starting their due diligence during April vacation while the kids are out of the school, so they can go into school in a safe place and do physical due diligence. There's legal documents, et cetera, so we have weekly calls, just like anybody would, just to do status things. It wasn't until this morning that we actually, Pete Kane actually shared with Delamar for the first time this plan. So while there are synergies, I also want people to know that, you know, what's happening at the Hadley is actually really independent from this. I'm sorry, I said this morning. Yesterday morning was the conversation with Delamar. We asked to get back on a call today with them 24 hours later to let them sit with it for 24 hours, just to come back to us and say, hey, like, is there anything like, did we just step on your toes of what you want to do? Did we do something good? Are we on a path? And nothing's perfect. I mean, but I do want to, and Charles Mallory is the head of Delamar, and is the one that addressed the town, the select board meeting that night, but he was effusive, and he, my read of it was that he was more concerned that he would be underwhelmed by what we did, and that he would say, huh, okay. And he's quite the opposite. I think that's important just to note, because I think we need to find the synergy with everybody, not just Delamar. We need to find the synergy with the other residents and businesses on Humphrey Street. But I did want to share that we did have that conversation with Delamar, and we did have a follow-up conversation today, and they came back effusive and happy to roll up their sleeves and partake of it. They know it's a community process, just like their hotel's a community process. So that was just a conversation I wanted to make sure people know that we did connect with them this week to update them as well. And I'm sure they're now a stakeholder as well, so they'll partake in future conversations with everyone.
Thanks, Peter. Anything additional from the board before we open it up?
Can we just make sure when the next community forum goes out that we give flyers to the Humphrey Street businesses in case they would also like to have
Absolutely.
opinions?
Yep.
Great. We have a hand on Teams. Hey, Aaron.
Hello, this is Aaron Burdoff, Precinct 5, founding member. My initial feedback is that this is a wonderful idea, and for three particular reasons. One, it connects the fabric of the Humphrey Street, which I think is a wonderful thing to do. It's currently marred by empty parking lots most of the time, which is not very sightly. Two, libraries are great knowledge centers, and we need a lot of knowledge and education overlooking King's Beach, which would be a great tie-in to get some education around what's happening in King's Beach, how we're fixing it, moving that process forward. But three, I think the interesting opportunity this opens up is that we could have potentially public housing in the current library building. So we could maintain the historic nature of that building and convert it into public housing as well, which is a wonderful opportunity, a needed opportunity for Swampscott. The only two suggestion I would have is that just from my personal taste, I would love if the library, this new library could have a coffee shop inside of it. Not quite a revenue generating opportunity, but a wonderful thing to have in town for a coffee shop to walk to. But anyway, wonderful, and excited to see what happens out of this. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for the presentation. Sierra Munoz, 65 Fuller Avenue, town meeting member, member of Open Space and Recreation Committee, Conservancy, Swampscott Conservancy Vice President. Also, I'm the daughter of a librarian, and I'm the daughter-in-law of a librarian also, so I better watch what I say about. No, and I think we have an amazing library service in town. I was able to connect with the library director last year, actually, to support the the makerspace idea and the new teen space in my role as an environmental educator. So that's really neat. And I just, I think, I really appreciate the gravity of these discussions and the number of stakeholders and ideas and urgencies that people bring at all of those discussions and in the surveys. There are such disparate visions for what this space could be. So I appreciate, the challenge there. And I think this is a really exciting conversation and idea to start thinking about. I just would urge us to keep in mind that open space is not the same as green space or nature space or even inviting recreation space. And I just want us to be as thoughtful with the green infrastructure on this site as with the built infrastructure. It can become an afterthought in a lot of projects. Unfortunately, gets cut from the budget, I think. So I just want to really reinforce that, it's not enough to put down sod and some trees. And we are actually really fortunate in town to have a lot of local expertise on, what can make something really green, really accessible, and really coastally resilient, right? A lot of those. So, just really, if there is that built infrastructure on the space, to urge us to create something that honors the connection to nature and to the ocean that was reflected in the new beach sticker that you just shared, which is so great. I would even, if there's going to be a built structure, let's shoot for it being LEED certifiable and really cohesive environmentally to be proud of it if that's the direction that this goes. And again, I think this, as Peter stated, there's obviously a long way to go, and it is nice to have a concrete idea for people to chew on and push back on, and maybe that won't be it at all, and maybe it will end up being primarily more open space. But if there's built space, we need to be proud of that from an environmental perspective. And then the other piece is I know there's a lot of concern about revenue generating use in that space, but there's a lot of community entities that contribute to our town in ways beyond direct revenue. Big Blue Bargains, as one great example, makerspace, art spaces, gathering spaces for community groups that bring a lot to the table outside of direct revenue. So just making sure that any future space or infrastructure here is inviting and not restricted to those who can pay. So that's all. Thanks.
There was something that was not addressed.
Sir, name.
Arthur Friedman. There was something that wasn't addressed. You had the open space, you had the building, and then the parking issue was kind of down here. But in reality, you're looking at an area where parking is at a minimum. And is parking to the left where the church parking is now, or is there a space considered for that? Or are we talking street parking, number one? Number two, is this building really big enough to do all what you're saying? I mean, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of things that are being put forth to be used in the building. Wedding spaces, the libraries are going to be big enough. Is it 2 stories? Is it 1 story? He said something was below the ground. I don't know quite what you meant. But the library needs a lot of space. If you're going to have function rooms for children or families, that requires space. And also, if you're going to have something else in there with, I don't know, the size doesn't quite go with what you're saying. That's where I'm coming from. And also the parking. Well, there'll be open space. Excuse me, I like the green area. That's a lovely area there. It's always been my favorite. And I think we need to maybe more planning to do, or bring up more what you mean by putting all this in that building. It's a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. Can I just just take a stab at? So I think all great questions. I hope that you come to that forum. Really, really great. I don't think we have a date, but you'll hear about it to do it. I would say this, a couple of things. Great questions, which is why, as I said earlier, this is, and I think you said it's early, right? And this is an idea that then has to be refined and refined and refined. And some of your things may prove out to be issues, some may be opportunities. So I think they're really, really good questions. On parking, I just want to keep coming down to it. The town has an agreement in place that allows the town to use the St. John parking lot on Humphrey Street during non-church hours. It is the best kept secret still 5 months later, right? And I don't, for the life of me, cannot understand why we've kept this. It's not really a secret. It's just that we haven't, for some reason, put a sign up. We haven't told residents. It is free off-street parking except during church services. And so I just want to, I'm using your question as just an opportunity to reiterate this because no one seems to know. And I don't know why we are being so quiet about it.
Well, we will change that.
A parking lot that no one uses is the same as having no parking lot.
Understood. We will make sure we get a robust press release out tomorrow about that. I really do appreciate those concerns as well. We did work with our architectural team. This site is 1.5 acres, and if you kind of get a perspective of our existing library's features, this is a big piece of property. And so the rendering actually shows quite a big, building. And certainly, I think as we continue to, present and talk about this and really get some feedback from the library director and the library board, I think they can talk with us about the space needs for a 21st century library. But we feel pretty confident, given the team that we've pulled together, that what we're talking about will be achievable within the concept that we've presented.
I think, too, the other thing we talked about when we spoke about the Hadley concepts, and some of those folks came forward and gave architectural mock-ups and answered the RFP, that the recipient that we actually ended up choosing gave the least detailed vision, because they said the same thing that I think we're trying to reiterate here, which is this is not just us coming in here and telling you what you need to put in this space. It's a community discussion, right? Like, this is a marriage for a very long time. We want to make sure we see the things that are important are reflected in our vision. We just don't want to throw our vision down your throat. I think that's the same idea that HDR was trying to convey here, which was, here's a concept, something tangible enough to have real feedback on, ask real questions on, but not so much that people think it's a done deal and I don't need to have an opinion because they've already figured it out and my opinion doesn't matter anymore. So it's like trying to strike that delicate balance between promoting the conversation, having the holes poked in the idea, but not turning people away, right? And so I think if some of the ideas we brought forward don't end up in the library, that wasn't meant to be. If it doesn't become a library, it wasn't meant to be. If it doesn't, but inviting people to have opinions on a tangible idea is a lot easier than I think some of the other multiple versions of the same idea and what's better. And so just my thought about it. I think lots of opportunity for additional feedback, for sure.
Thanks, Katie.
Hello, my name is Louis Trezullo, Farragut Road. How's everybody doing? Nothing I say I don't want to be taken as negative. It's just perspective. Beautiful building, loved it. I guess there's a lot of questions that just go with that picture, because I attended a meeting at the school, and when we talked about, there was 3 designs that were popped up in it before we did the breakout. A lot of them, it was a mix between half green in a building, kind of, I think the building was kind of on the corner. We talked about a trellis in front. With this, I guess I would ask that if the idea that we're going with is a possibility of a library, and I know, Sean, you mentioned a bunch of different things like activation inside the library. I guess the biggest thing is, if that is going to be a thought, could we also get a sketch of what the inside will look like? Because if we're trying to be sold on a library with activation inside for all the things that were mentioned, to be able to, you know, sell that, I would want to see the inside and what the thought process inside, because, you know, we could say all these different things, but then you see a first floor, how the heck do you turn a library into a wedding venue that's big enough, you know, that you would want someone to come there? So I guess if you want to sell us on a library, there should be a rendering on the inside so that we can see that, and then put the two together and maybe, you know, go forward with that, and then we can speak on how to make it an activation space. That's the first question. Second would be, is there opportunity for like, I know it's a library, a thought of it, it's a library, but I mean, is there an opportunity to do an event, a space that could be multiple things, not just like a full stretch library, but an area where, you know, we mentioned yoga studios, we mentioned all these different community room for kids, you know, stuff, different things. I mean, you know, if you just do a library, we know how a library is. It's going to be quiet, all these different things, you know. And it looks like it's only one floor, just by the way. And then we also, I know at that meeting, we also talked about activation outside of a building. Because initially the building was smaller, there would be, you know, the green, you know, the grass. But we talked about, you know, possibly being an area where maybe the town will rent out, you know, cornhole boards. Maybe the outdoor fire pits, you know, that are already pre-built so that people could go and enjoy that, you know, which would offer an opportunity where the town could have their own coffee shop for people to get a hot chocolate and go, you know, something like that, where it could all be meshed together. So, and then I guess whatever the rendering is, you know, when you get to the top floor of the building, whatever the building will be, you know, if it be smaller, bigger, could it be something up there as well? You know, I mean, I don't want to say a bar because, you know, everybody gets crazy with a bar, but still, I'm just saying, you know, if you go up there, you know, and someone can enjoy, a mom can enjoy a mimosa while, you know, the kids are reading a book or something. I'm just saying, you know.
Lori's gonna be very happy, Lou.
Like, that's a great opportunity to, you know, overlook. I mean, that's part of the reason why a lot of people go to Mission on the Bay, you know. Whether they decided the food's good or not, they love the rooftop because they get to hang out there, you know? So I guess I'm just asking for, I think we need more detail, and I know this discussion's gonna be open, but especially if we're proposing a building, we need to see a rendering on the inside, just so that we can work on, you know, building something fun for everybody to use, not just a quiet space.
That's awesome.
Lou, totally agree. I think, you know, this has to work in a little bit of a phase, because you don't want to hear me or anybody that isn't a library director or really working in a library talk about the space needs for a library. That's the next, if this idea actually resonates with folks and really makes sense, we can then kind of move forward and say, all right, let's talk about the space needs for the place. And on a personal, I love all of the ideas that you're talking about too. I want everybody to feel like, show up, share absolutely your highest and best expectations for how this site can actually continue to make sense for the town.
Yeah.
I also just want to say, like, gets to be our version of a library. If you go to our library right now, the bottom floor is rarely quiet. It's rarely quiet. Because the children's room is down there, but the teen space is also down there. So, and yes, it's definitely quiet upstairs, but the bottom floor is very active, and there's, you know, some running around, much to the librarian's dismay. But this gets to be our vision, the entire community's vision. So if you guys want yoga space and enough people want it, then try to figure out how we do that. So I think, again, that's why it's important that we didn't just create a rendering. Yes, I understand, like, it makes it something tangible for you to have feedback on, but I think, like, maybe having the community forum first to find out what some of those key needs are, and then having conversations with the library and the board of trustees to understand how our current space doesn't work, the programming that they want to do that they can't do because they don't have the space, even our rec departments when working out of Reach Arts. But they could be doing a lot of programming in a space like this. So sort of pulling from all of these different places to really put together a list and then going back to HDR and saying, or another architect and saying, hey, these are all the wants, these are all the needs. What's the best sort of feeling on all of them?
Yeah, and I agree, and I, like I said, just as long as whatever the input is going forward, you know, if it's just a library or whatnot, whatever that building is, just before we come to a completion and agreement, that we get that rendering inside, throw our ideas in a pot, we'll see how it looks, and then I think it'll be great that.
So I have two thoughts. First of all, I just have two thoughts, and I'm going to use it as a good example. You started by saying I don't want people to hear this as negative, and I want to let you know that I don't hear anything you said as negative. As a matter of fact, to me, it's proof of you're responding to something specific, saying I want more to know about this, this, and this to evolve it, and to me, that's hopeful, right? That's hopeful. That's you just saying, what could it be?
Yep.
And if we speak in the subjunctive right now, I think that's really healthy. And I hate in writing, I hate the subjunctive, but I think in community building, you got to live in the subjunctive. Would, could, should, right? We're in that would, could, should stage, as opposed to being in the stage later on when we say we should have, we could have. Mm-hmm. That's the one I worry about later on. So I want you use you as an example. Like to me, that is, there's no bad ideas. Like challenge it, add to it, subtract to it. Yep. The second thing I think we should just talk process, just to not assume others would know process, right? Your point about internal plans. So the library building program is, when I reference the MSBA, which is the School Building Authority, it is akin. There is a manual you can go online right now and read that will tell you the size of spaces that the state requires you to have, never mind for certifications, but funding, right? And so there are things that are going to make sure the library is what the library needs to be, and they're going to be a financial partner, and a needed financial partner. But even more than that, this board, and again, I'm going to be long gone from this board actually doesn't get to decide this ultimately. This board gets to push forward an idea, and residents can push forward an idea. Town meeting is ultimately going to be the one most likely to be the one. It's definitely not the select board, because the select board doesn't have money to do anything. It needs to go to town meeting to do it. So there's a lot more process. Think about the new school when you think about this building. By the time the taxpayers were being asked to vote on the new school, because of the MSBA process, we had gone through some very extensive planning and design documents so that you actually could look at what a kindergarten classroom was going to look like in concept, right, to that point. I think it's fair to assume the same type of things here, because if we go down the path of library, there is no library without the state being a partner and requiring that level of detail, which is time-consuming, arduous, and expensive, but it also guarantees a result, right? It gets you to a more predictable place. So I just wanted to explain that process so that people would hear that this is really the first inning of a 9-inning game in terms of ideas.
Quick question, does Hawthorne currently pay rent to the town, to rent the space? So as a...
Yes, but if you want to offer $1 more.
Don't tempt me, like to cook.
Thanks,
All right,
Lou.
thank you.
Thanks, Lou. We have some hands up on Teams. Diane, can we recognize Maura Lau? Hi, Maura.
She's got it on mute.
Maura, whenever you can unmute yourself and make your comment. Okay, we'll come back to you, Maura. We have Cece.
Hi, good evening. This is Cavallaro, Precinct 3, former town meeting member and former member of the Commission on Disability. And first of all, Mary Ellen really didn't get all her questions answered. In fact, she was kind of dismissed. I feel like this is already the only option people have come up with. Were there other options? So what were they? Secondly, I'm all for the open space. The building looks humongous, but is it ADA? I mean, if you're a senior or elderly or disabled, are you going to be able to make it up to see that beautiful view? Were those things taken into consideration? Because they certainly were. So those are just a few of my concerns and comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy.
So I'm not a building expert, but I think if anything's built currently, it must be ADA compliant. So although the inclines might look aggressive, if there's elevator access or other ways accessibility, we would have to abide by those rules legally. We don't have a choice. And I think we would be prohibited from funding if we didn't do those things.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure that, yes, fears aside, it will be ADA compliant.
Thanks, Katie. Maura? Liz?
Hi, Elizabeth Pappalardo, Precinct 3. I was watching at home, and a couple things surprised me, so I just figured I'd come down. This is library, first time hearing of it. Is it the first, most of the board is hearing of it? Okay, so I was confused why Delamar had heard about it before most of the town. Because you had mentioned it sounded like it was a done deal, and then you mentioned you had just talked to him about it. But do the two need to be cohesive?
No, I don't have, so I'm happy to answer the question. So Delamar, I'm just going to repeat what I said before, which is we have weekly calls with them, and we gave them a preview yesterday morning of it.
Before the town, before telling us?
Before this presentation tonight, yes, because as someone that we're asking to invest tens of millions of dollars in our community, we decided since we had the call, it was better for them to hear it a day early as opposed to 7 days late. So we made the decision to share this information with them. Yes.
And then just wanted to remark also, when you say before we hadn't done anything to build community in the past, and this is the first, buildings are nice and they make a community look nice, but that doesn't make a community, right? So just so you know, that Hadley spot has been a traditional spot for this community for so long. It goes back generations and generations and generations, and it used to be a place where kids could walk and play with their friends and sit on the steps when school was out, or we had Park League there, stuff like that. So we've definitely always had community in that area. So maybe you're trying to build more buildings and stuff, but the community's there. And the community would appreciate really feeling involved in whatever processes go forward with these spots, which I know you've heard a lot, but I just wanted to amplify that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to also expand on what Peter said, since I was also on the call. The call with Delamar, the conversation was the same as we're having with you all right now, which is this is an extremely community-driven process. This is an idea that we're putting forward for folks to punch holes in, to have feedback on, to have opinions on. This was not, hey, we're building a library. Do you like it? That's not what the conversation was. So I just want to be very clear that this conversation was what we had with Delamar, just to say, just so you don't read about it in the paper, we're going to give you a preview so that you're hearing from us exactly what we're going to say tomorrow night. So just want to say that.
All right.
Wait, I still do have is this the only concept that they have presented? Were there any other concepts?
This was the only concept that
Okay.
they've presented.
Thank you. Well, what's really important for me as we're going along is to see sketches or assumption tables on finances. It's important.
There's a really good idea lying in there, which is Sean, again, going to outlive me. I would suggest that we actually, to help illustrate for people so that they just understand, and we would need to understand, in public procurement and prevailing wage, if we just wanted to spend, we already bought the property. So now it's ours to do whatever we want to do with it, right? And so we can make a decision. But if we were going to spend $1 million on the property, what does that look like? If we're going to spend $5 million on the property, what does that look like? And $10 million? And just because I think none of us really actually have a sense of what, if you just wanted to make the green space look like Red Rock down the way and just wanted to do that, if that's where the community is, what would that, I think that's really helpful to say that. I think people are going to be surprised. It's not cheap, right? Parks aren't cheap. But I think it helps for comparative analysis for people to do that so they can decide where the value is and what they're getting for the dollars there. I think that earlier when Mary Ellen mentioned that the slide said that finances were less, it wasn't finances, it was revenue was a lesser concern, that people, when they responded to the survey, to the surprise of many of us, I think, revenue wasn't in their top of their list primarily. It was actually in the bottom of the list. Other concerns just did. So it wasn't saying that finances aren't important. Finances, of course, are important. But it was about whether or not revenue should drive the decision here as opposed to not drive the decision. But I'm glad that you've kind of addressed it by saying we can have an and here and do both.
Mary Ellen, I appreciate those concerns because frankly, when we look at the town's finances, we have a lot of responsibilities to balance. And I do think it's going to be important for us to really look at all the different revenue streams that we're going to be able to access because of the proposed concept here. But certainly, we're not right there yet to make a decision about, what we're going to do with the property. So getting some of that financial information, I think, will be helpful for folks to really see, that it's not just about spending town money. It's about actually getting state funding programs and getting some other endowments to help make this reality achievable. I am remiss, though, in not just mentioning that creating some of this open space really is so helpful to mental health. It's so helpful to so many things that, frankly, a town as densely settled as Swampscott is. We're a town that has really tight neighborhoods, and having any type of open space, especially waterfront space, is so valuable from a public health standpoint. And I don't want to lose sight of that. I think the town deserves this. I think people deserve this, and I think we ought to use our best level effort to just look at this as carefully as possible as we seek to do something extraordinary.
Thanks, Sean.
I have just one. What is the match rate for the library state fund, roughly?
I'll have to get back to you. I'm not exactly sure how that is factored, but if it's anything like the MSBA, it's very complicated.
What is that fund called?
Library Building Fund, I think is what it's called. There's actually it's actually a really interesting read. There's actually a great manual that's very layman-like, which helps diagrammatic and whatnot to show you kind of programmatically what they seek in these things.
Okay.
We're looking to schedule something within the next month. We have a number of holidays that we have to work around. We have school vacation, so it's a complicated month, but we're trying to find that date. We want to have it soon.
Do you think we'll have a date by our next meeting in a week?
It's my expectation we'll have a date hopefully by the end of the week.
Okay. Thanks, Sean. Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Related to that, for folks who aren't at the meeting, when will the slides that you presented be available on the town website?
They'll be on the website tonight.
Great.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to a discussion and possible vote. Okay, we're going to move on to a discussion and possible vote to open the annual town meeting warrant of May 20th, 2024, including review, discussion, and votes on articles for inclusion in said warrant. Sean.
All right, so as we discussed last week, we have a number of warrant articles. We can step through these this week. Individually, we also have a new warrant article that has been presented from the retirement board at the back of the warrant article. And happy to step through these with the board or answer any questions.
Let's step through them.
Okay. So the first article is, a report of boards and committees. Second is the approval of bills of prior year. This is generally a housekeeping article. The third article is the appropriations to the FY25 budget. Finance Committee is meeting now. Typically, we make adjustments over the next few weeks as we get more certitude for healthcare costs and other line items in the budget that will change between now and presentation.
David, can I interrupt just for 1 second? Didn't we just do this walkthrough like we did a week ago? Like the same thing?
We did, and that's why I had asked.
Are we doing
if-
something different now, or?
We have one new article. If the board wants to discuss that new article, I think that might be a good use of the time, but happy to just step through if folks had questions. I'm happy to answer those as well.
So that's all that's changed in the last week or two, is just this one article? Okay.
Well, I also think that you have some numbers, placeholder articles, just looking at Article 4, for instance, where you have establish a retention and recruitment stabilization fund. Maybe you have an idea as to what that recommendation would be.
We're still working through some numbers. Obviously, we're taking a look at the town's financial position and reserve levels, but certainly hope to have a recommendation in the next week.
On which article is that?
The establishment of a retention and recruitment stabilization fund.
Article 4, Mary Ellen.
Yeah.
We also are recommending establish of a utility stabilization fund. We've talked about that over the last several years. These are fluctuations that can change year to year, and it's hard for us to stick to a really steady annual budget with utilities that may fluctuate higher than.
But for Article 5, do we have is there a recommendation from the town administrator or the finance or FinCom or professional staff as to what that number should be?
We're getting that number, and certainly, over the next week, we're going to be making a recommendation. We're looking at the last 10 years' worth of energy costs and the impact to the town budget, and trying to get a sense of how we can stabilize those utility costs and how they impact both the town and school operating budgets.
Okay.
Do you all have the actual language for that in your packets?
No.
For 5? Okay, I just want to.
We don't.
Okay, all right. So I have no idea at all what the intent is there.
The intent is to stabilize the operating budget. So just like, snow and ice, utility costs can fluctuate wildly and help.
So this has been, I get it. This has been an issue that really has varied
It has,
widely.
and
so-
it helps us, protect the operating budget from, swings in utility costs, and it's been in place in other communities to help really just ensure that we have a steady focus on operating budgets, and we can draw upon a utility stabilization fund to offset any significant increase over a 2% plus new growth, whatever that number might be.
All
we
right,
could
great, thanks.
Go back and use it as a stabilization fund.
So can you go back just to Article 4? On Article 4, the purpose of this is, and just explain to me why we don't want to keep this on the operating budget. We're going to, or you want to take it out and keep it in another fund?
Over the last several years, we've had a significant change in staffing levels. We've talked extensively about, some public safety vacancies, and just the cost to go out and try to recruit and train and address some of those issues can have a significant impact on one fiscal year. And so what we want to do is really address some anomalies that would happen if we had a significant issue with recruitment or retention. If we have a number of staff that frankly are, looking to make changes, certainly we don't want to have to go through that disruption, and we want to have some funds that would help us just stabilize the workforce and the budget.
I'm not sure really I'm in support of that, but that takes a bigger conversation. One question I do have is on retained earnings. If we're looking at putting in capital articles for sewer infrastructure, is it a good idea that we're looking at moving money from retained earnings, or is that actually something we have to do mechanically just to balance, to get money out of retained earnings?
Marianne, I'll look into that and get back to you. I do think.
I think this is rate stabilization.
Sean, I can answer that if you want.
This is money that is, they don't know the amount yet, but I think this is the money to smooth out potential higher than normal increases in water and sewer, and retained earnings is what in the past we have used to smooth out those rates. So I think this is anticipatory. And Amy, tell me if I'm totally off, but I think this is anticipatory.
It's not due to the rates. It's because as of mid-year when we did our tax rate, DOR told us that our projection, because our consumption was down, was trending that we would be deficit in this for the second year in a row, which we have not in fact been deficit. We appropriated additional retained earnings last year as well. So this is in anticipation of having to do additional retained earnings to balance the budget for those enterprise funds.
Well, that would be to balance the budget in 2025?
2024.
So does that mean
This
that
is for
we're undercharging?
2024?
Does that mean that does that mean that we set the rates too low? I mean, I'm not saying it judgmentally. We're coming in under revenue.
Yeah, so the projected usage, due to the conservation efforts of the town and all of its residents, the projected usage has been trending far lower than what we projected. We projected with conservation, but not as much conservation has actually happened. And since there are fixed costs in there that are not reliant on the consumption, we are having to appropriate additional retained earnings to balance that.
So are you going to similarly though propose, or is there going to be proposed retained earnings for fiscal year 25 water rates in anticipation of something being abnormally different? Last year we didn't use them, I don't think, but my question is, have you guys modeled out fiscal year 25 water rates preliminarily to know whether or not we're going to need retained earnings? Or not?
We're modeling them right now, so we don't have that yet.
Okay.
The last couple of years, we've tried to model this so that we can address some of these issues during the annual town meeting. Unfortunately, when people conserve more, it actually costs us a little bit more because the town actually makes revenue.
So conserving is bad fiscal policy.
That is a frustrating reality. That said, people should conserve water.
Amy, is that the same situation for water?
Yes, it's the same for water and sewer.
Okay, so when you're going to estimate what the rates are going to be for sewer, are you anticipating what capital expenses are going to be?
Yeah, we factor in the debt payments in that calculation.
Okay, and when do we vote on those rates? Is that the end of April?
Yes, normally.
And Amy, are
We have so we have a meeting with the chair of the water and sewer infrastructure next week. Patrick and myself do to go over how we're going to start that process with the new committee to make that recommendation to the select board.
And Amy, are we just looking at what the rates should be on the water sewer side for for our existing debt service, or are we also looking ahead to what capacity we may have for future projects?
Both. So we model it both ways.
So I've asked the town treasurer to look at our sewer rate. Our sewer rate generally trends much lower than a group of peer communities. And so what this tells us is that we just haven't invested in sewer infrastructure consistently with other peer communities. And so I've asked the town treasurer to actually model what would happen if we actually brought our sewer rate up to a level of our peer communities, and how much additional bonding could we recommend to help address some of the additional work on that infrastructure. And so it's my expectation that I'll be back shortly with the board to talk about how we can make recommendations to utilize some of that capacity.
Thanks, Sean.
All right, so
7 and 8.
9 is an approval of free cash for opioid special purposes. This will allow the town to take advantage of an opioid settlement fund. This will allow the Board of Health to address some of the statutory approved opportunities to address addiction and some programs for public health. Article 10 is an approval of free cash for a special education reserve fund. This is something that I've discussed at length with the superintendent, and this again falls in line with some of those stabilization concepts that we have costs for education. We don't know one year to another what they are, but they are statutory, and as we continue to address some of these fiduciary responsibilities, having a portion of our financial position put in stabilization accounts just allows us to stabilize the operating budget.
We did this already, right?
We have.
Yeah. So just in general, I also don't have the language for this, right?
Yeah.
So time-wise, when do we need to have all of this? I have a mishmash of different pieces here. When is that okay right now? Are we behind, or when?
Generally,
when should we really
we can have this language updated over the next week. Where typically.
So if we met next week, we could have a really filled-in version of this to look at. Okay.
When we're meeting next week or whenever to have a filled-in version, what are the mechanisms on how this money would be released? For who makes the decision on how to release money out of these different reserve funds? I think we just need to have real clarity on that.
Mary Ellen, there was an agreement that the town administrator and superintendent had signed when this fund was established that stipulates that it's approved through the regular AP warrant process. So the school committee would approve it the same as they do all the bills that get appropriated from their budget. And then the town administrator, as the designee for the select board, would approve it as well. So that way it keeps any of the information out of public, so it isn't really focused on any particular student.
So if we already have that already set up, why do we have another article?
This is just additional money to go into it.
I understand.
Yes.
Got it.
So I think what's going to be helpful is to understand how this is. The goal is to have it be a stabilization fund, but when 100% of the money is used in its first year, it doesn't, and we already need to refill it. It doesn't feel per se like a stabilization fund. And so I think we just need to with conversations with the school finance team and whatnot, just really understand, be realistic about what it is. What it is what it is. I'm not questioning that, and we need to support it. I'm just saying that I also want to keep the intellectual honesty about a stabilization fund, what it's supposed to be, and not just a recurring annual, we fund a stabilization fund, it gets used, we fund a stabilization fund again type of environment. I mean, that would make it a very unusual stabilization fund.
Just to follow up on that, is there ever a time when we think it's potentially that we would underspend and therefore it would really be a stabilization fund? Or is every projection that every single year this is and has been going up and up and up and up?
So we have trend lines. We can get into some analysis. We've done some deep dives into, how we have spent some of these dollars. I do think there will be a time, we're coming out of a pandemic, we're going to have years of, some challenges, but certainly, we can get some information from our school department and really help just show the merit behind this. I think, what we're trying to do is stabilize the operating budget, and by putting some funds aside, these are specifically special purpose dollars. They have to go to these types of uses, and it allows us to, keep a steady hand on the operating budget.
And these dollars would come out of, the dollars for some of these reserve funds what are the recommendations on where the dollars are going to come from?
From free cash.
Free cash. So Article 11 is a amendment for or general bylaws for revolving funds for Andrew Chapel. This would allow Andrew's Chapel to raise some funds and expend these funds in the preservation of the chapel. Article 12 is amend bylaws for revolving fund for Historical Commission. This would allow the Historical Commission to increase their spending limit to address some of the town's historic preservation responsibilities. Article 13 is the adoption of the Community Preservation Act. This is an important funding program that will allow the town to access, state dollars in advance of a number of critical priorities.
Wait, Doug, do we have a public meeting or any announcement? Go ahead.
That's nice catch. I was going to wait till select board time when 3 people were left. Next Tuesday night at the high school, B129, there will be an open public information and question and answer session about the Community Preservation Act. So encourage everybody and anybody to come and get the full lowdown on the value of the CPA and the impact on tax surcharges and exemptions and the great things that can be done with the CPA.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you, David, for that PSA.
Yep.
All right, Article 14 is Chapter 90 improvements. This is a number that we get from the state every year, and it's a housekeeping warrant article. Article 15 is recommendations for capital projects.
I have a question on that. We haven't reviewed the capital projects, and yet the Finance Committee already has it. When are we going to be really giving our opinion on the capital projects?
I'm happy to present it to the board at our next meeting.
That'd be great.
Yep.
Article 16 is zoning bylaws.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Because there was a question about this at Finance Committee too. The process is that they recommend first, and then we do?
It's the town administrator. And
No, so it's.
Yep, it's
Go
not.
Go ahead, Mary Ellen, because this is.
Town administrator recommends it, makes a recommendation to the select board. Select board has a conversation and makes a decision. Then the select board sends it to the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee.
Sends it to Capital Improvement Committee, who then makes a recommendation to Finance Committee, who then makes a recommendation to town meeting. So inherent in that is there's something that's.
Capital Improvement Committee has already voted on these things.
They've voted on they voted on a plan.
Yeah.
They voted on a plan, and so again, this is, I mentioned this at a prior select board meeting, it's a process that needs to be fixed.
Yep.
Which is our Capital Improvement Committee is not in charge of creating, maintaining, and controlling our capital plan. That is the town administrator with the select board. And then they get to review it and have that thing. But they, just, the missing thing here is that before you, Sean, it's not a you thing. No one has ever presented to me a capital plan before it went to FinCom. Or a capital plan or a capital
Well,
recommendation for a
FinCom is
year.
already reviewing it
No,
in
I'm just-
detail
I'm-
too.
Yeah,
so-
I'm just saying that no one has, and I think that, so the customary practice is actually not following actually what the practice is supposed to be, and so at some point, we just need to reset and everybody say, okay, time out.
Right.
We got to do it differently because the rules actually have it be done differently, or change the rules to do it the way that we're doing it if people think it's a good idea, and I'm,
Well, as the policymaking board, I think it should be starting here. But just to give a comment about capital improvement committee, I don't really see capital improvement as making policy. They are handed a slate of projects, and they are just, in their meetings, I just would see them vetting the projects and asking a number of good questions. So, but your comment, I am 100% behind that it has to come here first, to start here and give some direction, because it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, you're not again doing anything which anybody before you did. I think that we just got into a custom and practice, which is just sequentially out of order, and it doesn't make sense, so we just need to fix that.
We need a capital plan that is as robust as the annual budget and gets approved as a plan in the early fall, and then it becomes a capital budget when the board and the town administrator actually approve a list of projects that should be advanced. That's not how the town charter conceives it.
But regardless, we're going to have this conversation at our next meeting. We are meeting next Wednesday, so this will be on the agenda for the 10th.
Great. So Article 16 is amending, to amend zoning laws and accessory dwelling units.
Do you mind if we, to the chairman, and we can just quickly go over, but like, maybe we'll have the planning director be here and we can go through this zoning once and not have the conversation twice, partially tonight and partially the 10th or another night?
Yeah, that's on the agenda for the 10th as well. So yes, we can skip over the zoning articles.
Thank you. So I think that's 16, 17, 18, and 19.
Yep.
All right.
Gets us right to leaf blowers.
One of two leaf blowers, apparently.
All right.
So what is the 20 leaf blower? Is that something we're bringing forward? So are you bringing that forward, Sean? What is?
Is that the one that's in response to whether or not we want to implement fines?
That's right.
For the leaf blowers, I think is that
And
one.
if we wanted to implement fines, we would have to go through an article, a bylaw?
We would, because it would need to be included in the bylaw.
Okay.
So are you having town council draft language? So I mean, just kind of tell us, because we're not at a point of deciding whether or not we want to do it. There's also we might as well talk about it now, there's also a citizen petition
Right.
To reverse the leaf blower ban that's in place, the gas leaf blower ban during the summer months. There's a citizen petition to reverse that. So there's potentially two things here for us to talk about.
And does it, before we go off spending money for town council to write up not that it's a huge deal, but we haven't had any discussion here about whether or not we actually want to do anything.
We can have a discussion right now.
Yeah.
That's right, that's
Let's
what I'm
go.
suggesting, yes.
Well, we passed a bylaw to ban leaf blowers, so it would make sense, after spending some time to get out and try to engage the community, that we have a little bit of a stronger tool to help support.
So this sounds like this is right now, the town administrator is working on a recommendation to make to us that we then can decide whether or not, it's our warrant, right? So the board can decide whether or not they want to keep it in or not, but there's going to be a number of things like stabilization funds that he's recommending. We decide whether or not it goes forward, but we don't have the language yet to know. So I would just suggest we hold off on having the policy discussion, because I don't even know what it is we're actually having a policy discussion on at the moment. And I want to just give the town administrator a chance to flesh it out for us.
We have that.
I will.
In a week?
Absolutely. Yeah. Article 21 is the general bylaws for fingerprinting certain applicants. Once we fingerprint them, we have their records on file, but we are required to fingerprint them every year, and this will allow us to avoid redundant levels of effort.
Who are we required to fingerprint?
Anybody that receives a liquor license, anybody that applies for a liquor license application, typically a number of other municipal applications.
Okay, so no one-day liquor license would be fingerprinted, just annual liquor license, beer and wine?
Typically, it's annual. I'd have to look into the one day.
So can I just ask, who on staff is, who on your staff owns this warrant? Meaning, who's helping you with the warrant?
The Director of Finance and Administration.
So we're 3 weeks away from having to close the warrant, and there's a lot of articles that seem like we should, if the concepts here, the fingerprinting one's a perfect example, we should have the language by now. And so this just needs to be by Monday filled out, so we have time to look at it for Wednesday.
Okay.
There's just too many articles that are, again, you guys are balancing so many things, so I understand that, but we've got a runway here, and so let's use it.
Continue.
So Article 22 is a recommendation to amend the town charter to make changes in the elected and appointed officials. And there's a number of boards and committees that frankly we have been looking at, and I'd like to have a conversation with the board about considering appointing the Board of Assessors.
Okay.
So I am completely not in support of making a change to a charter without having this vetted with the public. And we haven't had conversations in public about it, and I just.
Well, we don't even have language yet, so in fairness.
Right, and we don't have language.
So in fairness,
We're running
I
out
don't
of
even know what
time.
we're talking about yet. But again, so
We need language.
So
just get
I will
us
have the
language, language, and you have to be prepared to support your recommendation. Again, wherever it goes, what goes, but.
Article 23, acceptance of easement for public parking and sidewalks at Elm Place. This is a project that will help us advance some changes for a project.
Yeah, so just, let's be more specific so people understand what we're doing here. You don't need to be vague. There are parking spaces that are part of the Elm Place Westcott development that when the project is done are going to be deemed public parking spaces. Right now, that land is private land, and so therefore they wouldn't be public parking spaces. But once the project is done, those spaces are going to be available for the public to park. So this is effectively giving us the rights we need to increase public parking adjacent to this project.
This was probably all part of the deal.
It's all part of the comprehensive permit
Right.
and the review by the departments for the project. So this is just a formality now that they have to give us, and we have to accept an easement
Got it.
for doing it. So it's just a formality.
All right. Article 24 is a request to appropriate $225,000 for improvements to properties located off Archer Street. These are properties the town recently acquired. We've received notice that we will receive a grant in this amount, and this will help us create a trail, a non-motorized trail for 10 acres of land behind Archer Street.
No pickleball courts there, right? That was just a joke.
I am
Sorry,
happy to
keep going.
entertain
Sadly, it's not.
conversation.
Sadly, it's not.
That's much to the great work of Marzi Galaska, our Community and Economic Development team. Last one is a citizen petition for gas-powered leaf blowers. These are just mandatory articles that we have to include as part of the warrant.
I
Seeks
just
to-
want to make a comment on grants. We applied for a lot of grants, and it seems like it gets a little bit confusing. We have an actual policy in our financial policy manual that grants are supposed to come to the select board prior to being applied for. So I'd really like to get us in line with our financial policies. So can we start focusing on that?
We will. We can absolutely start focusing on that.
Thank you.
Can we have a conversation about that?
Sure.
No, just about, I'm just a little perplexed and confused as to, we have a hardworking town staff who are trying to do their best to apply for these grants. I don't understand why the select board or FinCom should be involved and engaged with what grants Marzi and her team or others should be applying. I just don't, I just fundamentally, I don't see that. Like, we're a policy-making board, but we're not involved in the day-to-day operations of the town. So if
We made a policy. We made a policy. We have a financial policy that this board voted on. And in the policy, it specifically says that applications for grants will come in front of the select board. So that is a policy that we have. If we want to change policies, maybe that's a different comment. But I don't think that the intent is to slow anybody down. I think it's to get real clarity on what we're doing so that everybody knows what we're doing and just how to run a little bit tighter ship. This board, the policymaking board, made that policy. I'm recommending we follow the policies that we've made.
Yeah, so I think, David, what you're saying is that maybe we should revisit the policy. Because I am looking at the policy, and the policy does say that for any grants in excess of $5,000 needs to be. So I think what you're saying is, let's revisit the policy.
Please.
Which is,
Yeah.
you should talk to the chairman and see if you can put it on an agenda in the future.
I'll have a conversation.
All right, there you go.
I will update the warrant, make sure that we have many of the articles, we already have town council's warrant article. We'll just update that and get it out to the board as soon as possible.
Thanks, Sean.
And I sent an article in from the retirement board. The retirement board sent an article.
That's right.
I
It's
sent it
actually
in
in the
last.
back of the-
I sent it in last week. Okay, so
package.
that's something we have to just chat about.
Right, this is an article voting to see if the town will increase the base of the retirees' cost of living allocation from $14,000 to $16,000.
So that's something the retirement board's asking for it to be in the warrant? They voted to include
Yes.
okay, so we should.
Voted to advance it to the select board.
Yeah, so can we just, that's going to probably require town staff to do a presentation, and the retirement board can as well, but I mean, I just, to understand this on its face never is self-explanatory as to what the true financial implications are. So we just need, and the retirement board should come here too, and that's great, but it's one of the articles that's never self-explanatory.
And with the retirement board, we don't really, it's not really up to us whether or not it gets on the warrant.
It is.
Is that
It is.
correct?
No, it is.
We still,
It is up to us.
It is up to
It
us.
is still.
To get it
okay.
on the warrant, so.
Okay.
The only things that are guaranteed a spot on the warrant are citizen petitions, in verbatim to how they're
I thought
submitted.
because of their independent status, they had to have, okay.
Now,
All right.
but they could do a citizen petition and do that.
Okay, anything else about the warrant? Sean, staff, a lot of work in the next week to really get the language, and if we can have this a few days ahead of our meeting, that would be greatly appreciated, so we can come in on the 10th.
We'll make that happen.
And really have a robust conversation. All right, we'll move on. We're going to have a discussion and possible vote on the use of town ARPA funds. The way I envision this discussion going is really a two-part question or a two-part process. We do have a meeting next Wednesday. I think it's important that the town administrator provide us with an update as to where we are as of today, and then I think we're going to continue that conversation in addition to discussions about capital at our next meeting.
That would be great. I think, tonight, our Director of Finance Administration has put together a presentation of where we are today with the town's portion of the ARPA funds. We do have some departmental recommendations. We don't have all of the detail, but we'll put forward some additional information next week, and the board can actually have a conversation about allocating some of these dollars and really prioritizing these one-time funds.
Can I just ask, we've actually had a presentation just like this, and we've gone through what we spent, we've gone through what the rules are, and I think we've seen many of these departmental, I haven't gone back to compare, but are these new departmental recommendations, or are these the same ones that we saw previously?
These are the
And-
same ones.
Yeah, so I don't know that I need to go through the exact same
We're actually
presentation we
not gonna
had 2
go
months
through
ago,
that.
and then
We're just
and
gonna
then
go
take this
through
up
the
again
balances.
on. So if there's some new things you want to throw on the table, that's awesome. I'm just saying, we keep, because we haven't finished this process, we keep repeating the same presentations, and I'm just, at some point, someone's just got to put a recommendation on the floor and say, passes the legal muster that we can use funds for these things, the board debates it, and the board votes, and then whatever, right? But I don't need to hear the rules anymore. I just need to hear the recommendations.
Is this what the remaining dollar amount is?
Yes.
2,151,000? And that's taking everything out of Pine Street?
Yep, so you guys voted 1.76, and that vote didn't change, so that mostly updated the year-to-date expenditure.
We voted 176, but wasn't there 300,000?
Yeah, so there is
That's not the right
there is a potential, we potentially, let's circle back. If you remember, Amy, there is some affordable housing trust fund money. Let Mary Ellen and I will circle up with you. I can't, it's been a while since we looked at the numbers to understand what the current cash needs are versus what the ultimate cash needs are, because there are other expenses. I don't know whether or not the 176 covers those or not, but
Right.
let us,
I just want to make sure we're.
yeah,
really
let us
talking
let
about
us just circle back with you, because I just can't.
And the other thing I think that's not on here, Amy, is we did another 30 for Glover.
Okay.
The one thing we did do is, we did, yep.
Nope, I might have missed that meeting, so I will add that.
All right, so that 2151 number will change.
Yeah, the
Glover and-
the hotel's on there, though. Hadley Art.
Yeah, Pinnacle's on there.
Okay.
All right, so I, based on that feedback, I think it would be best for us to just circle back around next week with,
Perfect.
So if we can just, again, and I'm not trying to simplify this, but this is great. We know the money we spent. We know what we spent it on. If you can put forth with the chairman, whatever you're recommending for whatever things, and, just in a simple, in a table, right?
Yes, I got it.
Just to help us, because I think there's so many recommendations out there, and again, I want to give fair viewing to everything. It's just that I think at this point, it's a little confusing to us.
understood.
Well, hold on, I just have a couple questions, just so I get these out beforehand. What does this, Public Works, Kings Beach, Water Quality Engineering, 3 years? What is that one?
That's the one that
Proposed cost,
Kleinfelder
$2 million.
presented about.
What?
That's the one Kleinfelder presented to the board about cleaning up Kings Beach.
Yeah, so they did like 4 months ago now. So again, I'm just gonna, I'm not saying this to deter your questions. There is an illustration of like how dated our information is here, and without having Kleinfelder back here, someone needs to be prepared to answer these questions, and really prepared to answer these questions,
Understood.
right? And I don't think we want Kleinfelder back here again, repeating themselves.
Yeah, we actually need to update quite a bit of information for some of these recommendations.
Okay, thanks.
Right, so it's the interface between the capital plan, ARPA, maybe the sewer,
Water and sewer
water and
enterprise
sewer,
funds. Yep.
right?
And debt service.
Funds, right? So like, especially when you get into this Kings Beach potential money, right? Like, where is that potentially coming from if you're suggesting something over and above the $5+ million we already approved 6 months ago or whatever it was? Right, so right now, it's like very murky. Are we talking about something additive? And if we are, where is it actually being funded from?
Yeah, no, I agree. I just agree. I mean, it's just murky at this point, no pun intended. But it is for us, and I appreciate some sentiments that were shared earlier that we should just do one thing, but we have to look at all these plans and all these needs and know, at least be conscious of the choice we're making. Agree, disagree, whatever, but be conscious of saying, by doing this, we know it's an opportunity cost, right? There's something we're not doing. What is it that we're not doing, and how does that take care of itself in the future, for example? And so somehow this has to become much simplified, but much more robust in terms of making sure that the left hand and the right hand have truly
Absolutely.
coordinators? Okay. I'm sorry, Mary Ellen, I wasn't trying to circumvent your questions.
Oh, I didn't get the feeling you were circumventing them. I just want to see where we stand with fishermen's. I don't see anything here for fishermen's, but maybe that's what you mean for Kings Beach. You know, we're going to be talking about this next week.
Yeah, there's a much more robust conversation that is going to happen on the 10th.
So that's also next week, too? I'm just trying to understand what our schedule is.
Yeah, we're meeting, we're gonna
Monday
be
through
meeting Wednesday for 10 in regular session.
For a 10-hour marathon.
Yep.
I'll do breakfast. Who's bringing
Well, no, I
lunch?
mean, it primarily is this
It's
financial stuff, right?
yes.
Oh, and the warrant.
And the warrant.
That's really all it should be. I mean, can we just agree that that's all I mean, do you have something else that has to absolutely be on it? Because,
What happened to our Eagle Scout?
Eagle Scout pushed until the 10th, so the Eagle Scout will be on the top of our agenda on the 10th, Mary Ellen.
all right.
Pretty excited about the Eagle Scout.
I was too. So we'll get them next week.
Okay.
All right, we'll move on, unless there are any other questions or comments. We'll move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is designed to expedite the handling of routine and miscellaneous business of the board. The select board may adopt the entire consent agenda with one motion, and at the request of any board member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda for discussion.
I'd like to request that we remove February 12th minutes and ask Sean to ask Diane to look at those minutes and just adjust them to be accurate of what was said during resident comment.
Okay.
I would move the consent agenda minus the February 12th minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Select board time. And, oh, wait, just Diane, when you make those changes, can you send the red line to the board?
Yep.
Please, thank
Will
you. Thank you. Select board time.
Just keep people up to date on a lot of work that Marcy's been coordinating with a number of us around resiliency and upcoming deadlines for grants. So municipal vulnerability preparedness grant is due in a few weeks. And, Harbor and Waterfront Chair, Water and Sewer Committee Chair, Climate Action Committee Chair, Capital Improvement Committee Chair. I have everybody?
A lot of chairs.
Yeah. Have been, meeting regularly to kind of work through, and then had some interface with Kleinfelder as well to get their input and expertise, to make sure that we're kind of picking the right area, right project, right scope, scale, et cetera, to put ourselves in the best position because these grants are becoming incredibly competitive. So there's no guarantee certainly no guarantee that we'll get it, but it does feel as though we are moving towards, with the municipal vulnerability preparedness grant, focusing on kind of the entire, they like them to be big, the entire area, Fisherman's to Eisman's to Phillips Park, like that whole region basically of town. And what are the different alternatives that we should be assessing? And then ideally, we would be getting through with this grant all the way to, with public input, regulatory input, to what are the design-ready next steps? Like 10% design, like starting into design. That would be the output ideally after a year's long, if we got the grant, went through this whole process, by the end of it, a year from now or so, we'd be in a place knowing this is exactly what we are doing and we're not doing, and we'd be ready to apply for like a 50 or 60% design or pre-construction or something like that grant. So it would kind of take into consideration all the different ideas that are floating around, kind of pun intended, and winnow those down so that we actually have a full community, and community engagement is going to be a big, big piece of this. And there's active conversations involving trying to get even more people involved specific to that area to play a role in this process. And then right after that, just to finish that up, if anyone has any questions, Coastal Resiliency Grant comes right after that. And so same type of thing there. Then there's a question, is that same region the best region to focus on for that type of grant, or is it better to focus on Kings Beach for that grant? We're working again with Kleinfelder. Kleinfelder is also bringing in different subs likely with this, like Woods Hole and others that are experts in various pieces of this. And so hopefully over the next 2 months, we will have put in 2 grants, maybe both very similar to the same area, maybe one for one area, one for the other, whatever we think is kind of most competitive. That's the thinking.
Will you be consulting with the select board?
I just did. No. I'm just, sharing. That's the thinking. We could certainly have, because we just got like an outline of what Kleinfelder would be proposing, like in the last day or two. Yeah. And so we've asked them to kind of beef that up. So we could certainly bring that back if you would want to have that as a brief agenda item next week, when we just said we wouldn't, but we could certainly kind of have a blessing of that or not.
Take that agenda. Oh.
Absolutely, assuming we, supported it,
You all good? You good? I just actually want to take a moment in one of my remaining few select board minutes to actually talk indirectly, I guess, to staff in town. Tonight is a great reminder to me of the importance that you all, and Marzi sitting here, so I'm going to look at Marzi and Jonathan still here, our library director, the role that you play. And yes, we may be at a point in time sitting up here and we're elected and we're policymakers, but you guys are the idea mills. And it is hard to put forward ideas, because when you don't put forward anything, people don't tend to swat away nothing. But when you put forward things, there's always going to be people that want to swat it away or want to do something a little differently or don't like this or don't like that. And but good towns need you to keep showing up and doing this and planting seeds. And sometimes you don't get what you thought you were going to get when you planted the seed, but you still get something. And I know, let me say it this way, from my position, I know that there are meetings that I go home and I feel demoralized. Right? There are just nights where I go home or I wake up the next morning and I feel hungover emotionally, like that was just disappointing. I could have said something better. I could have done something better. I could have helped that project better. I didn't do a good, I said something that maybe made staff not feel appreciated. But even for us, we have to get back up and we have to then do it again. But for staff, you guys in my 9 years, and there's been a lot of people, so I'm not going to mention names at the moment here. Your ideas are what's critical. The fact that you put forth what you put forth tonight is important. I don't know where it lands, I don't know where it ends, but I know that we're planting something, and we're not going to look back in 100 years and say would've, could've, should've. We're going to say we thought about that. For different reasons, we made a choice. Maybe it wasn't the choice we'd make now, but we didn't have that opportunity now, or then, excuse me. And so I just wanted to, and it's all levels. It's not just, we see community development and planning and public works the most often, but it's everywhere in town hall. If everyone's making a decision every single day. Some are bigger and more obvious, but everybody's making a decision. And I get in politics, it's tough because then things get political and it's wins, but believe in your compass. If you think it's a good idea, right? Be open to compromise, be open to alternatives. But if you believe it's a good idea and something worth fighting for, I encourage you to do it. And I'm grateful because you have all given me, most of the things that I've advocated for are not my ideas. They're your ideas that you folks have brought forward and allowed me to advocate for, and my colleagues as well. They're not our ideas, and that's the important thing is, and different select board members have different philosophies. Admittedly, I'm not going to judge one over another. Mine has been, I viewed my position here to support the town in doing what it needs to do. It doesn't mean I don't have opinions, and it doesn't mean at times I will bang a table and say this is my opinion, but I'm here, I was here, I'm still here a little bit longer to support what you do. And so just thank you for what you've done. Thank you for the audacious idea tonight that we could actually have a world-class library. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Peter. It just came to my attention that I accidentally skipped one of the agenda items, which is the discussion and possible vote to open the warrant for our town election. So I apologize. And
so moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. I just have two things for select board time. There's going to be a formal dedication of the Frank D. Felice Diamond. This board voted to name our Swampscott High School baseball diamond after Coach D. Felice, and that dedication will be happening on Saturday, April 27th at 10 a.m. at 207 Forest Avenue behind the Swampscott Middle School. There'll be a brief speaking program and the unveiling of the sign naming the field with a reception to follow. Hope all of you can join. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Hold on a minute.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So for my select board time, I have, the Disability Commission is in need of a gate, Sean, over at Clark School. And I need to get an answer to that, hopefully tomorrow.
big
If
of a
you
gate?
and Gino can, the playground, the playground at Clark School, if children are playing in there, they can get out of there. There's a section there that they can get out. So
The front or on the back?
I think it's on the back side. I'm not sure. But I think Gino has products that he can try to fix it, but he's going. If you could just look into that, and if you could get back to me tomorrow, because I have to give them an answer. I want to thank the Disabled Veterans Association, Mike Sweeney and Jeff Blonder, for the great job they did with the Vietnam Veterans Breakfast last Friday. They really do a great job. And I'd like to ask, I think on the CPA, if we're going to have the CPA in the warrant, if there's any possibility that we could have like about four meetings to really get it out there and maybe have something, something that people can just plug in on the website and get educated, because
Yeah, it's going to be recorded next week, and
Yeah,
we
if we
definitely
really-
anticipate having at least two. I mean, we'll see how many.
I really like to see more, just push, or even if it's just recorded, we just push that out.
So
just
next week, if you come, then actually you can run the next one.
I will be there.
So that would be awesome.
I don't know if I know it well enough, but if I know it well enough, I will do it again. I had the opportunity to speak with a company called Sport Court, and because I was doing some research on pickleball, and really, are there other places that we can put pickleball? And a gentleman from Sport Court came down, and just before I came here tonight, and he looked at our court over, our pickleball court right now, and they do some work in converting tennis courts into pickleball court, and he said that they could make that a four-court pickleball court and tennis court, that they have that. So I asked him to send his information to Marzi and to Sean, and just get us some more info, but there's a possibility that something could happen there. And the reason I went and looked at that is an individual from town meeting said, if we don't get this through, we're going to have no chances, and I promised I would look into it for him. So I'll be set. So that's the information you're going to be getting from Mike Shariel.
Terrific.
Thank you. So now I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Good night.
Thank you, Sammy.
you.